Fantastic to have you on the show today, Mike. Thank you for joining.
I'm elated to be here, Katie. This is great. And it's not too early in the morning for me to be able to do it.
Yes, the time difference for podcasting is all part of the fun. We have so much in common that you're the productivity is, I'm the focused bee. I feel this is going to be a focused and productive conversation. And I want to dive straight into one of the topics I know you've been working on recently, which is prioritizing. So when we last spoke about a week ago, you mentioned that you had this new approach and you'd been thinking a lot about prioritizing. And I'd love to hear your thoughts and new insights on this topic.
So prioritization to me, I think one of the things that drives me nuts about prioritization is how misunderstood it is and Greg McKeown alludes to this in his book, Essentialism, of how like priorities don't exist because, the word priority rooted in I think it's in Latin is literally means the next thing, like the next thing. So you can't, as soon as you say the next things, your attention is split, right? And if anyone's listened to me before or seen me before or read my work, it's like, productivity is about the active linking of intention and attention. Like that's what it is. Efficiency, effectiveness, all that stuff are byproducts of that. And it's the soft skills, things like focus, things like awareness, things like, all those things, expectation management, like things that we do have more agency over, will allow us to be more productive. And deciding how we're going to attack a priority is one of those things. And I think if we started to think about the boundaries around what your priority in any given moment should be, it will actually help us deliver a greater outcome or better result with whatever we're placing that kind of empowerment on, right? So one of the things I've been thinking about a lot about prioritization is the idea of precision, right? And I know when we had a conversation before about this, and there's that episode will be coming out on my podcast, A Productive Conversation, sometime in the future as well. I believe that precision has a lot to do with prioritization. So the more precise you are, which means getting filtered and dialing it in, the better you can prioritize. So I think a lot of people, and this happens with projects, tasks, whatever, they'll do things like work on book. And for example, I know you've been working on one and stuff like that. Work on book is a terrible task because your brain cannot, like it wants to complete it, right? Like it wants to be able to check off that thing. And if you don't complete it, then all of the other emotional responses that go with leaving things undone show up. Oh, I didn't get this done. Oh, I'll never get this done. Like all that stuff shows up in big waves and small waves. So when you prioritize, the more precise you get, then you can actually say like, I want to write 100 words for, which is not a lot, but it can be. We talked a little bit, it can take a lot to get the right 100 words out, but I want to write like say 1,000 words for chapter 1. Well, now you've filtered it, right? Because you've said, I'm going to write, which is an activity. You've also quantified it a bit, which is the right kind of quantification, like 1,000 or I want to 30 minutes or whatever it is on chapter 1. So you're getting very precise, which allows you to make it a priority if you choose to. The great thing is with prioritization, you don't necessarily have to do the whole eat the frog or climb the summit method or whatever. It's, you can look at it and go, what am I going to do next? And by having that precision, you will work through priority after priority after priority throughout your day. And ultimately, if you're planning your day the night before, like I do, or your week or whatever, the more precise you are, the better off that priority has a chance of getting not just done, but done well. So I think precision has a lot more to do with the idea of creating a priority and not only creating it, but getting it to the level that you want it to get to than really any other factor.
So being precise and specific on what we want to achieve and what we want to do at that moment enables us to get started and do it and not overthink it.
Right. Or need to do. Like, I think this is another thing that I think, so when in the work that I've done, when you've been doing productivity for a long time, you start to look elsewhere for things that are related. Right. And this goes back to my time doing stand-up comedy and improv and things like that. Like I would always look for the funny in something. So now that I've read a lot of time management and productivity books in my time, but now I start to look elsewhere. And I looked at like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like the different levels. And the thing is that I believe that needs and wants, I think what ends up happening is that we don't value the things that we want to do on a to-do list, especially as much as the things that we need to do. Like, we got to get this done. And that's why I don't like saying I have to do this, I have to do that, because that's an external, like, that's not internally motivating. It's like, I have to pay taxes. That pisses me off, right? Like, that's, I mean, I know the general help of paying taxes, but if you say like, I need to pay my taxes, well, what's the need behind it? Well, it creates, the roads are better. It creates about, okay, it forces me to be a bit more thoughtful about it. And so when I'm looking at a to-do list and when I work with clients, sometimes we explore what I call the productivity ROI, which is like the ROI stands for realized objective index. It's this idea that, what do you need to do and what do you want to do? Okay, I need to, cook dinner. Okay, great. I mean, do you want to cook dinner? Don't really want to. I'd rather order it, but I need to because I don't want to spend the money that I would spend eating out or whatever. But I want to write the 1,000 words for the book. Because, by the way, if you're an author and you don't necessarily need to do that in one fell swoop. And that often what happens, to your point, is the longer you leave something you need to do sitting there, the wider you get with it. So it's like, I need to write 1,000 words. No, now I need to write a chapter. Now I need to work on the book. So you lose that precision. Whereas with wants, you dial it in a bit more, because if you want to do something, if you dial it in a bit more, you're going to get that. And the wants are at that higher level of the hierarchy of needs. Now, sometimes you need to do something and you want to do something. If that's the case, then that's even more compelling because it's an intrinsic internal motivator. So we actually score the needs and wants on a to-do list this way. So if it's a need to do, it gets like a 1. If it's a want to do, it gets a 2. So that way you want to have like this score of where if you've got 10 things on your to-do list, the highest, index you could get is a 2.0, which means you did everything and they were all things you wanted to do. But that never happens because there's things that you need to do. You don't get to do everything you want to do all the time. Nobody does, right? But the real sticking point is there's also these things that we ought to do, right? So I actually use the acronym like need to do, ought to do, want to do. Problem with ought to do's is that we're not decisive about them. Like, I ought to do this. There's a bit of a lackadaisical element to it. So if you don't decide that the thing you ought to do is either a need to do or a want to do, it's worth exactly 0 points. So you have to be thoughtful, because if you do 5 things you ought to do on a list of 10 and 5 things you need to do, you're only going to get like a 0.5, which is like, you look at the score, you're like, 0.5 wasn't very productive. Well, why wasn't it? You did things you needed to do, but you did some things that you weren't decisive about things. And that's, I think, the other thing is that when you're looking at your to-do list and the things that you need and want to do, both for yourself and for others, if you're not decisive enough and intentional enough about them, then you're giving your attention away that could be better directed towards the things that you need and want to do.
So it sounds like it all comes down to making decisions so that we are intentional in what we do. That's also what you were saying when you spoke about prioritizing, because it's deciding what we're going to do next. And This is really, and the decision around also if it's a need to or want to, and not leaving it in that sort of blurry area of ought to. And I'm going to come back to what you're mentioning right now around writing a book. And we were speaking a bit about this off air. We were saying how it can be an unsatisfying task because you don't get that dopamine kick. You don't get that just ticking it off, especially since books. But I think we could almost generalize to creative work. It requires mental space that isn't dopamine inducing. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, so John Cleese, who is one of my, member of Monty Python, there's this talk he gave, and he says that the 2 things you need to be truly creative are time and space. You need both. You can't just have one. If you have all the time in the world and no space, you feel restricted. You can't, it cramps your style. If you have all the space in the world and no time, you feel rushed, which means the quality of your deliverables will be lower. More expertise you have, obviously the better the quality is. But nonetheless, if you have a balance of both, then you're going to be able to deliver great work. problem is that we only have 24 hours in a day, and everyone tries to cram in so much in a day that they're often cramming in, again, things that they're, they didn't intend to do. So they didn't have a plan, or they got diverted by the demands of others, and they didn't have boundaries in place that allowed them to say, you know what, I'm not going to answer that person right now because I want to test those waters. So they have this all or nothing approach. Oh, every text comes in, I'm going to answer them. Well, my phone has vibrations where it's like, it's either, if it's my wife, it vibrates a certain way. If it's my daughter or my son, it vibrates different ways. If it's anybody else, I now know it's not one of those three, so I won't necessarily answer it. Right. So again, that's about having some foresight and forethought around this stuff. But I think that the interesting thing is creative work is hard, and you don't get whether you're making a YouTube video or writing a book, or even writing a nice email newsletter or building a course or anything like that. You don't get that dopamine right away. You're trying to fill it with something else. This is where I think, and based on my experience working with clients and also my own experience, this is where, though, you can actually that's where quick wins help. But quick wins aren't you can't quick win your way through the day, because it's not fulfilling in the long term, right? You have to think, you have to be in the moment. I think a lot of people spend so much time going, I can't wait till the future. They're thinking down the line, but being present is really powerful. But you can't be fully present unless you've set yourself up so that you can be fully present, because there's things always pulling you in different directions. So so when I look at my to-do list, and I have a method that I use, time crafting is the philosophy and methodology that I teach, which is something I've, fostered and nurtured over the years. But people were asking me well, okay, but how do I know if I was productive? And the ROI definitely plays a role. But I've also said, well, I love the idea of the hexagon. And again, the focus bee, we talked about this before as well. And on my show, we talked about the hexagon and how bees, when they make a beehive, most people realize, oh, they're all hexagons. No, they're circles, but they turn into hexagons because they're joined, right? And nature loves hexagons. I'm like, well, we're part of nature. The only part of time that is not man-made, that is not natural, is the week. That was written about by Eviatar Zerubbabel. I butchered that, but in the 7-day circle, every other aspect of time is natural. So I'm like, well, what if I focused on 6 of my intentions per day, my things? I call it the 6. So I will write down 6 things that are, I'll take them out of ClickUp. I'll take them out of and I will put them on a list, and I have no more than 6 of them there. And what's interesting is that some of those 6 are things like send email to Katie. That's one of them. And people are like, oh, well, that's it. That's okay. Whatever. That's a quick win. Yeah, but it's my win. It was my intention. So that's how you can get dopamine to work in your favor, because I intended to do that. I gave it my intention. It elevates the amount, because if you're just checking Facebook and spinning the wheel, you're not getting necessarily it's such a low dose, right? Very rarely do you get that spike. But if it's your intention to do something like that, I'm going to go into Facebook and I'm going to post this thing, and that's it. That's intentional, which means it's fine. The problem is when you're doing things unintentionally, when you're giving your attention away, and that's often what happens. People will ask me what's more important? I'm like, they're both important. It's like a marriage. You have to have both. And the problem with, if you have all the intention in the world, but no attention, then your intentions are powerless. It's I'm going to write a book, but you don't have a way to pay attention to it. That intention ain't going to happen. But I think the bigger problem is that we have all of this attention, but no intention behind it. It's aimless. So then we're like, how did I get here? Where'd the day go? Right? Because you weren't intentional. So I'm not suggesting, and this is what I mean by when it comes to creative work and when it comes to just attacking your to-do list in general, I'm not suggesting that you don't do things have in there, get to inbox 0. I don't think that should be the measuring stick for productivity. But if you're I want to send an email to this person, I want to mail my mother a card for her birthday. If those are your intentions, get them in front of you so that you can actually say that those were my intentions. Because nothing feels better than when I get my 6 done for the day. Now, they're my 6. Sometimes They are, so it doesn't mean I only do 6 things. Like people are like, oh, so you only do 6 things per day. I'm like, no, I have a lot of things going on, but those 6 things get done. And sometimes those 6 things are not coming from me directly. Like if you were to say to me, Katie, hey, Mike, I need you to send me your headshot and bio for this podcast. That could be one of my 6. As soon as I put it in my 6, it's now my intention. My intention is to send those to you. But I wouldn't have done that if you didn't say, hey, Mike, I need that stuff. So again, don't get this confused to like, well, you only put the things that you want to do here. No, but that's not the way any kind of expectation management, attention management, productivity, time leadership, whatever you want to call it, works. So if you're dealing with big creative projects, have a nice healthy mix. Like I want to work on this for the week. Here are my 6 for the week. 1, I want to get 3,000 words written for the book. 2, I want to film 3 videos for the course. 3, I want to send mom an email. Like that's great because 3 is like the quick win, right? That's how you do it. Because then at the end of the week, you're like, I did my 6, and that's going to feel fantastic compared to where'd the week go? How'd I do this? Oh my God, I didn't get the book done. Work on book, work on video. Touch base with all family. Like all of a sudden that leads to overwhelm. And that's the last place you want to be.
So in these 6, you talk about having some quick wins, and obviously there's some more time consuming or more important tasks, such as writing X amount of 1,000 words for a book. How do you manage these throughout the day? Do you just sort of alternate depending on how it feels for you? Do you have like moments where you do more creative work? Do you tend to first do a most important task, eat that frog first thing, and then break it up with a quick win? How do you juggle all these 6 to get them done during the day?
So this is where time crafting comes into play. So when I talk to people about time crafting, like, well, what is it? I'm like, realistically, the reason it's called time crafting is my son and I, again, this goes back to the connective tissue of the way my brain works. My son and I were walking to school. I think he was in like grade 3. And you don't ask your kids, like, what are you going to do at school today? Or how was school? Because your kids don't want to talk about that. So I asked him about Minecraft. And I said, I don't understand Minecraft. Like he goes, well, you take like dirt and rock and all these like basic elements and you put them together and you make something. And that something lets you do stuff. And I'm like, and my brain started to put this together. I'm like, so really time crafting is taking all of these things, the tasks we have on our to-do list, the calendar, and making them work so that your intentions, which is what your to-do list is, and your places of attention, which is where your calendar, you craft that. And the thing about Minecraft is you never really win Minecraft. Like the game never really ends. You could keep playing and playing and playing. That's time. You will not stop crafting your time until you have stopped existing in time, at least. So, it's kind of like meditation or exercise. It's lifelong. You get to, and the best part is that if you start to adopt some of this stuff, it becomes just what it's kind of like how you are. It's like a being more than a doing, right? Or it's a nice healthy combination of both. So the way I approach it is I know my body clock well enough to know that I'm a night owl, right? So I do not tackle high energy things early in the day. So if I'm looking at the first thing I do when I wake up is I don't look at my to-do list. I don't look at anything other than I think about what day is it today. So today, as we're recording this, is Tuesday. So I go, well, what does Tuesday mean? And this is called time theming. So I've themed the bulk of my days of the week. So Tuesday, because my wife isn't home, my kids are almost always, like the only way they would be home from school is if they were sick. So Tuesday is a day where I can do things like it's my training day. So it's days where I make things to train others or I train myself. So that means I will learn things like Obsidian, or I'll learn how to video edit or whatever, right? Or I'll build training courses. So already I've filtered my focus. I've already started because my brain now goes, okay, my overarching focus today are tasks that I have tagged or labeled training in my to-do list app of choice. So this is where the calendar goes. It's training day. Go look at your to-do list and see everything that you've marked as training. Then I go into ClickUp And also Todoist. Todoist is personal, professional is ClickUp. And by the way, it's not just training for work either. I will do things like I want to learn how to garden. So you try to make these themes universal. So that way you're not flipping operating systems when you go home, even though I work from home. So then I look at my to-do list and go, okay, what are all my training tasks for the day? And all of a sudden my to-do list of, 1,643 items is now down to, I don't know, 120, which is still a lot. But I also have the 6, which is where I would look first anyway and go, oh, well, here are my 6. Some of them, by the way, on that 6 won't be training. They'll be just things that don't fit into that. And that's fine. But I will try to do some training tasks first. And because I know my body clock, I will do some low energy training tasks first. Now, if none of my training tasks are low energy, then I'll start with low energy. I'll do that. How do I feel right now? I feel kind of tired. Okay, well, let me do some low energy tasks. Then when those are done, I'm like, okay, well, what now? Well, wait a minute. What day is it? Oh, it's Tuesday. Tuesday's training. Let me look at the training stuff. And I will work my way through the day that way. I have appointments. We're on a conversation right now. That's called an abstraction in my schedule, which means it's something that just pops up. I look at it, go, oh, Katie and I are having a conversation. When I get out of this conversation, the first thing I'm going to do is, what day is it? It's Tuesday. Tuesday's training day. Okay, what training tasks do I have to do? Oh, I've done the ones that were due today, because again, I have due date, like I have attention dates and stuff in there. So that's how I can easily isolate them. Or if they're on the 6th, I know which ones are prioritized. Okay, well, now what? Well, I don't know. It's, oh, shoot, it's 2:00. That's when Mike starts reading. That's my horizontal theme. So every day of the week. So what am I going to read? Let's look at the reading. Oh, look, I have to read this Zettelkasten book. So I'm pointing my attention, using my to-do list to point my attention, and using the calendar to act as a catalyst, right? Now that's because I'm more of a to-do list person, right? Like that's where my tasks live. If you're a calendar person, this works too, because you're like, okay, well, it's reading time. You can choose. And I try to keep it broad enough so I don't go read, Brene Brown book, because what if the library doesn't have the book, or it's expired, or I don't feel like it. Well, now all of a sudden my brain goes, well, I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? So it becomes like this war between like the higher reasoning brain and the primitive brain. So I'm trying to avoid that combat. I'm trying to avoid the primitive brain having enough of an arsenal to beat the pulp out of the higher reasoning brain, because it will go, well, I don't know. I woke up. What do you want to do? I don't know. Well, it's Tuesday. Oh, right. Tuesday's training day. Okay, fine. We'll do some training. And then I go do it. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, you're tired, Mike. You've done a lot of, okay, yeah, well, let's look at all the tasks we can do. We labeled all these tasks that I can do when I'm tired. Or, oh, Mike, we have a meeting coming up in a half an hour and you have no training tasks. Let's just go check email. No. Let's go see all the tasks that we've labeled as 5 minutes, because we have time-based modes here. So let's see all these 5-minute tasks. Fine. Like, you want to keep that from happening. And even if it does happen, at least you've got these things that can bring you back in. So that's how I navigate the day. Sometimes the daily theme doesn't work, but you know what? It'll show up again the next instance. So if I don't get all my training stuff done this Tuesday, guess what? The default day isn't tomorrow. It's next Tuesday. And if you need to have 2 training days, then it could be the Thursday or whatever it is. So it's just about knowing how the flow of your week is going to go based on your external factors, but also how you want it to go. And then the to-do list giving you, like, I don't look at the details of the task first at all, because my brain would go, oh my gosh, I have to write 500 words for the book. But if I say writing and it's writing time, oh, well, here's all the things I could write. Oh, that's later in the day, because book stuff happens between 3 and 5:30. That can wait. Let's do some other writing. Oh, I'm going to write an email to my audience, or I'm going to do this. So it's just about crafting this framework, and it's constantly evolving. And the daily themes don't stay the same for years and years and years. Sometimes they move. The modes generally do. Like, I know that once 3:00 hits, I'm like, it's high energy time. Let's take a look at all these. So I have a bunch of different ways to look at it, but it's all wrapped in this thing of time crafting. And by the way, if you're listening to this right now going, that sounds really complicated and sounds like a lot. It's not like I built it overnight. Like, when I work with somebody, I say, theme one day, theme one period of time, choose one category of mode, like whether it's energy or time. And it tends to go like time, resource, energy, activity, and then theme, because if you're theming, then that, and and then you just layer it and layer it. It's like when you build a house or when you're crafting art, like you're not gonna get it right out of the gate. When you're writing a book, the first draft is not what gets published, right? So you're crafting the book. So it's the same with time.
I love what you're saying about both the vertical and the horizontal aspect. I never thought of my calendar as a grid. There are things that I do every day at the same time. I block typically all of my lunches where I try and see people because I'm extroverted and it gives me energy, and I block my walk every day at the same time. But I never thought of the fact that it was both horizontal and vertical. And I also love what you were saying about the intention being the to-do list and the attention being the calendar. And I know that when I'm working, what I tend to do is as I plan my next week, I go through all my to-do lists and all my projects, and then I just time slot everything. And then I move my time slots a bit. So that means that I don't need to make the decision, like what you're saying, when it's training day or writing time, to actually go through all the tasks and things that you could do in writing, because I find that overwhelming and then I get stuck with decision making. But it doesn't sound to me like you struggle with that.
No, and that's because there's dynamic themes and static themes, right? Like the dynamic themes can be things like, so I consider the daily themes to be fairly static, right? Like I know that because your brain starts to get wired to do the same things. Plus you start to create anchors. Like I don't do podcast interviews normally on any other day but Wednesday, right? Because that's media day. So it creates a waypoint. So now you're eliminating decision fatigue. You're eliminating that. So we're back to where we started from, where it's like, oh, there's some precision here. Like Wednesday is the day I focus on, which means I only do interviews on Wednesday. Now, again, there are exceptions to the rule. Like if I know I've interviewed like people like Marshall Goldsmith on my podcast and Seth Godin and Chris Bailey and David. If they're like, we want you to be on the show, we want to be on your show. I will say like, here's my booking link. If you can find a time, great. But if not, I'll work with you. And that's the exception to the rule. The problem is more people make exceptions than follow the rule, right? So like and we all need our own boundaries. Like I know that book won't get written unless I have from 3 until 5:30 across the board, Monday through Friday. Like that's when now it says book mode, like it's book writing, but it doesn't mean I always write book stuff. Like I have like what's part of the book writing project? Oh, I have to look at cover designs. I have to do some research. So you want to, I mean, the idea behind time crafting is it's simple, flexible, and durable, right? And sustainable. That's the key. So people will say, well, what's the difference between this and time blocking? The difference is that you try to keep some of them as static as possible, right? So like every Wednesday is media day. Every, Monday through Friday is book writing time at this time. But there are dynamic themes as well, like weekly sprints, which are when I'm going to focus on a particular project over the course of a week. That's a bit more dynamic, right? So there are different elements of time theming that can work. But why I like theming my time as opposed to time blocking, so time theming versus time blocking. And by the way, I mean, we all use different versions of it, is your brain gets wired to follow a certain path. So like you said, your walk happens at the same time. For me, I generally don't like working out. I don't. So the only way I used to try to put it on my to-do list. I'm like, well, it's a to-do. I'm going to do it. Now, it didn't work. First off, I don't think you should put habits on your to-do list anyway. I almost think that should be a completely separate app that you use, right? Same thing with journaling. I don't think you should be journaling in your productivity app. Like I look at your productivity app suite as like the giant Voltron or Transformers that would combine into one. Like your to-do list and your calendar are like your main body. And then like the arms and the legs are like your journaling app, your habit tracking app, your email, like your like whatever they need to be. And you've got this giant like monstrosity that can do a lot more damage than like one on their own, right? So for me, I think that the key is with time blocking, because it moves, it doesn't get as sticky. It won't like, it almost gives me a reason to go, whatever. Like this doesn't matter as much. Whereas with working out, I'm like, okay, I'm meeting my trainer at 10:45 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That means I need to be doing other training at 10:45 every other day of the week that I do it. And then I build my schedule around that. Now, not everybody has that luxury, and I get that. But you do probably have more agency. In fact, not probably. You do have more agency over your time than you'd like to give yourself credit for. You have to test some boundaries. And you can't control time because time moves on whether we want it to or not. But you can command it, right? Like Like if you're a baseball fan, control, like when you're trying to control your to-do list, it's very hard at first, right? Because there's a lot going on. But once you get comfortable, and once you, like, if you're a pitcher, you work your way up to the pros, you have control. You want to have control over your pitches. If you get out of control, bad things happen. But eventually what happens is, as pitchers get older, they don't throw as fast, they don't throw as hard. They have to have command over the strike zone. So now they're taking into account the batter. Oh, I've seen this batter 14 times before. I know what this person swings at. I can't throw 99 per hour anymore, but I can throw 87. And I know if I throw it right here, oh yeah, that umpire, he has a wide strike. So the wisdom plus that allows you to have command over the situation. So in my mind, the days are kind of the same. Cope with what you can't control, command what you can. That's how you conquer the day, right? So this allows me to do this. And yeah, I mean, more people are probably doing this than they give themselves credit for. Like, I watch soccer every Saturday. Most people that watch soccer, they know that games happen on Saturdays and or Sundays. That's a daily theme. That's a theme. You know that you're doing that. If you go to church on Sundays, guess what? It's church day, right? Like so all I'm saying is do that some of your other days. Hey, it's Thursday. Thursday is triage day. What's that mean? Anything I've flagged is getting done because it's triage and I got to get this done and you don't have to theme every day either. I don't theme Fridays. I like to have Friday free. But it doesn't mean I just do whatever I want. I just don't have the support of the daily theme to point me. So I have to go, well, what do I want to do? I don't know. Let's do some writing. Okay. What's some writing stuff? Or I'm tired. Let me do it. So I still have the modes to rely on. Right. So it's just about giving yourself waypoints to, for your attention. And if you do that, then I know you're going to be more productive. I know you're going to be more focused too, because you have something to focus on, as opposed to, and that's how you get focused. If you're taking a video or you're shooting, like if you're not focusing on something, then it's pretty clear you're not focusing on it. No pun intended. But if you're like, I want to take a photo of that bird in that tree, you're going to focus on it. That's because your intention is that bird. Same thing with your tasks, same things with your intentions. If you give them attention, you can't help but focus on them.
Sounds like the perfect balance between the structure, like using the theme day or regular things at the same time every day, and that creativity and flexibility. So we're not just robots, but like I was saying, I move a bit my time blocks from time to time. That's maybe my version of it, but it's the same concept. You have the structure, you have some clarity, you have the precision, and then you also have the creativity, innovation that happens within those spots.
Yeah, so you have to stop doing productive, and you have to start being productive. Like that's really what this boils down to. And so I need to get as much done possible because that's the formula for a productive day. Problem is that you're not being human when you do that. It's a very inhumane way to treat yourself and your work, right? Because it's not just you that's suffering. It's the work that you do because it's not getting your best. And then it's the relationships that you have. Like, I don't like the term work-life balance at all because you don't need to put an adjective in front of it. It's just balance. Like, if you are balancing your actions with who you want to be, right? So you're planning, you're going, okay, well, but what is the plan for, right? Like, it's just like to get through the day. That's surviving, not thriving, right? So what you want to do is you want to, like, like to be is to do is to be. It's like actions can lead to who you want to become. But the problem is, if you don't know who you want to become, then you can't do the right actions. So again, it's like intention and attention. You have to, and I think one of the things that's happened over the last several years is that I think people are understanding that, wait a minute, just doing stuff isn't productive. Like, and if I don't do this thing, nothing terrible happened, right? Oh my goodness, everyone's working from home. Nothing will get done. Wait, no, stuff still got done. In fact, some stuff got done better. And now when we get together, there's a different kind of energy. There's a different kind of, I think productivity has changed. And a lot of us saw it coming this way. Like a lot of people who spent time in the space are like, this is good because productivity is no longer about like, I need to be efficient, effective. And it's very like, that's not, the tools should help you, get your intentions done. So the softer elements of like intentions and purpose and like that kind of thing. And so I think the goal of my work, and I'm sure it's the goal of yours as well, is to get people to go, is to not be so mindlessly approaching the day and say, look, doing productive hasn't worked for a long time. And it's not really, it's the fast food of like, of productivity. You want some real good, like farm to table gourmet. Let's be productive. Let's like, this thing doesn't need to be done. Maybe we can get a service to do it. Maybe it doesn't need to be done at all, but let's approach things with a little bit more thought. That's why it's called time crafting. A craftsperson doesn't, like, they are literally using their hands, or an actor is literally getting into their role. But no one ever says, like, you'll never hear an artist go, well, I perfected my craft, I'm done. Like, no, they're always looking to make it better. They're always looking. And that's really what time crafting is all about. And it's really what I've been trying to do with my work for the past, gosh, almost 15 years, through my podcast, through my writing, through videos, through all that stuff. And it's interesting that we're seeing more of the ideas of focus, awareness, clarity, overwhelm, getting the attention they deserve, because those, you conquer those, you find ways to deal with those, then there's no doubt that you're going to be productive. It's just a matter of you deciding what you're going to be productive about.
Amazing. Well, a wonderful note to finish on. 200% agree with everything you just shared right now in terms of the importance of focus and awareness and the clarity, that it's raising more attention nowadays and people becoming more aware of all of this. Before we leave, how can people find you?
Just go to mikevardy.com, we've got a new website design, which is great. We're kind of focusing in on that kind of stuff. There's obviously, you can subscribe to my email list from there, where I'll send you regular emails. I'm also, if you look for me on social, I'm at Mike Vardy on Twitter. And if you don't find me as at Mike Vardy, you can find me as at Productivityist, because that's what people call me, the Productivityist. So that's where you can find me. And we got a lot of interesting things cooking in the fire right now, and I can't wait to serve them up in hopefully in the very near future.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Mike.
Thanks, Katie. This has been a blast. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.